Welcome to Roots and Ruminants, your podcast for creative and innovative use of farm, pasture, and rangeland. We're going back to the basics of raising and grazing livestock, growing your own forage, and practical land use.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We are back at it with another episode of Roots and Ruminants. I'm Justin Frichte, your host of the podcast, and today we're staying in South Dakota with our guest. We've got Matt Feldhaus from Britton, South Dakota, but in the northern country of South Dakota. And you are Mr. Ranching South Dakota, or I should say Ranching Sodak, right?
Ranching Sodak, yep. Matty Ice, that's what my boys called me, so... and then Sassy Pants, my wife Kari, she goes by Sassy Pants on the YouTube Ranching Sodak. So yep.
We've got YouTube celebrities from the ranching world in the house today.
Kind of, I guess. YouTube's a weird way to be a celebrity, I guess. You just grab a camera and film yourself, and if people watch you, I guess you become a celebrity. But
I say now more than ever, it seems like the people that are disconnected from it are definitely tuning in. It seems like they've just found more interest in it. But it's not just them. I have friends that say that they love to watch farmers farm, and they love to pick up new things. And so it's a wide range of viewers, I'm sure that you have.
One of the things that I didn't really take into consideration when we started doing it is the older generation and the guys or gals that maybe grew up on a farm or had their grandparents' farm, but then they were disconnected and went to the city for their career, and now they're kind of retired and they're going back looking for that kind of that down home, not just necessarily our channel, but in general the ranching or farming that they grew up with, because baby boomers, large percentage of those have some more ties probably than we do as younger generations. You get farther and farther removed, but that's been fun to meet the older generation.
All right, so let's get back to how you got to Britton, South Dakota. Maybe give us a bit of the background of where you grew up, if you've always been there, if you've always been involved in the ranch, and kind of give us an overview of the farm today.
Yep. So I actually grew up in Howard, down by you guys there, by Brookings, just west of Brookings, and graduated high school from Howard. And then met my wife in 98, and we were down in Howard for 4 years and had a small little farm down there. Raised quite a few dogs. That was one of our things for a while back in the day. We had, 60 maybe adult labs, and we were raising hundreds and hundreds of puppies a year to try to get started. And
that is a lot of dogs.
Yeah, it was a lot of dogs. And the cow thing was back in the 90s, if you remember the early 90s, the cattle were really tough. It was hard to make any money on cattle, and it was discouraging to try to get in, but that's what we wanted to do. We tried sheep and buffalo and cows and a few pigs, and then those dogs, but then ultimately in 2003, we moved up to Britton to work on a large cattle ranch up here in the Coteau Hills. And like I say, if people aren't familiar with South Dakota's lay of the land on the eastern side, the Coteau Hills are just a beautiful set of hills, and we're right to the top, so we're right next to North Dakota. And the elevation's quite a bit higher here than most places on the eastern side of South Dakota. So we went to work on a ranch up here, and then in 2006, we started on our own. Bought a little quarter of land here from a neighbor, real close to this ranch we were working on, and just started renting pasture and building it up the best we could. We both worked off the place up until just a few years ago. So now we're cow-calf operation here, pretty full time.
Pretty full time. That is awesome. So when you started, you said you bought some land, you had some cows, you're leasing some pasture, had some off the farm gigs. Talk about that balance as far as growing a family and growing an operation and what that looked like.
Well, you got
pretty relevant.
Yeah, you got to have a partner, a wife that is willing to back you and want to do it, because she worked full time and we needed all her money to live, basically how it goes. And then I was working. Actually, what we did is I partnered with a fencing company, and kind of were half and half or whatever. It was still his company, but I had full set of equipment, and so we fenced, barbed wire fence all over the country up here. And then I'd get home at 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night, and then I'd look around at small kids I had and my wife, and I was like, well, now we got to go make hay, or we got to go move some cows, or whatever. So nobody liked me every day back in those days, but we made do, and it was fun. Rode a lot of horse with the kids when they were little, and it was. You just got to work 2 jobs for a while. That's the reality of the ag business right now. It's just tough to think you're going to just go start and just start.
Yep. And I don't know if it's ever been much different, to be honest with you. I think at every century, or when we look at different chapters in the egg cycle, it's always hard to get going.
Yeah.
I mean, we have that conversation a lot now, but they've always had that conversation, actually.
I think you're right.
There's been some times where land's been cheaper and equipment and capital investments have been lower, but it still takes money and time to just make it happen. And it usually does take a spouse to help with that.
Yeah. And you hear the old stories, I paid for a quarter land with one crop of flax, or or I trapped muskrats in a slough out back and sold them and paid for this quarter back in the days, and it's like, we kind of think about that as just a fairy tale, but there has been times in history where, if you played your cards just right, you could jump into this game and get rolling. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it's a lot of work, and just keep chugging along.
So are you still that diversified? You talked about we had the dogs, you had some pigs and some sheep.
No, and that was one thing we learned when we first started out. We were way over diversified. I had a carpenter business at that time, and we had a little bit of everything. And that's part of the reason why we went to work on that ranch was I just wanted to simplify our lives. I didn't want to have 35 things going and none of them really working right. I said, let's just enjoy ranching for a while. And I've kind of stuck with that. And the other thing we learned was we don't like calving in the wintertime. Even in the spring, we start calving May 10th. Because it was funny, we were working on that ranch, and there was about 600 cows at that place, and everyone went through the barn. There was 4 or 5 hired guys, and I still remember it. We were turning some pairs out, and it was May 4th, and the grass was about 6 inches tall, and I liked calving cows, but that was the first day that I said, you know what? This really is fun, right? Today is really a fun day. The first day I really liked it. And I said, if we start again, we're going to calve in May. And we started May 1st, and then every year since we started on our own, I've backed the calving date back a few days until the last couple years now. I'm right around that May 10th to 12th is where I start calving.
So the bread and butter of your operation is the cow-calf side, right? That's
all we have going right now. We don't have any crops for sale. All the farm ground we rent, it all turns into cow feed. Sure. And then we graze everything else. We sell nothing but cattle right now.
And are you're selling calves at weaning time? Your background in them calves, feed them a
little bit of both. We'll run a patch on grass, some yearlings, try to clean up the tail end, maybe 100 head of the smaller ones, or something that needs a little more time. But typically we're trying to sell March, April time frame. They're 10, 11-month-old calves basically when we sell them.
Okay.
Yep.
So you mentioned the Coteau Hills, and my wife is from Webster, so that drive up Summit and then go down. Yeah, you have some of the best grass in the country to graze.
Yes.
I mean, up in those hills, it's good, hard grasses. It packs a punch. It's dry ground usually, but you catch some rain.
And it rains. It rains is the key, yes.
Other than the winter, that's a pretty darn good spot to live and raise cattle.
The winter is the only thing that I like, and the only reason I like it is because it keeps all the neighbors away. Because it's like in the summertime, it's a heavenly place here, but in the wintertime, not so much. And I ain't got nobody picketing. I ain't got no protesters or anybody trying to buy a chunk of land next to me. So that's We need the winners. We need the winners.
You look out your window, like this past weekend was pretty cold. You get,
Yeah.
minus 15, 20-degree wind chills. It's pretty clear and it's empty.
Yeah.
And that's the best part about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, keeps the riffraff out for sure. So let's get into you said you do a lot of just make and feed on your cropland.
Yep. And I've tried many different things. Every year I kind of try something different. We did grazing corn, standing grazing corn for probably 3 or 4 years. I really like that deal in a lot of ways, but then and there's still a few things that I just can't get over the hurdles of. I kind of got the acidosis thing figured out, but it's just a tricky balance, to some years you might get really good corn and some years you might not, and I know when I chop it or put it in a bag, I know what I got.
Yeah.
I'm hit or miss. I've done that about 3 years though. This year we chopped everything. We grew corn and we piled it all. And then I went back and I did rye, cover crop, and I had some barley ground that we did cover crop in earlier, and the cows are actually starting to graze that now. I really like that. It takes a lot of acres to get to feed a bunch of cows if you're going to do the barley or the green type cover crop stuff. But that's really good feed if you can grow it, get the time.
When you're grazing that standing corn, are you allocating just a certain amount?
Yeah.
Fencing off some acres?
So what I did when I was doing that is I would take the field and I would have the choppers cut around the outside, and then we metered off and I had the choppers cut me lanes down through that. So I had a pretty good lane to run a fence. And yeah, that's what I was doing. But you got these swings, if you let the cows get hungry, then they go 2 days hungry, and then you turn them into another full chunk of corn. So then you got that spike again. If you had enough acres and you could get them onto it, the Canadians, they take big acres and they grow poorer corn, say 100 bushel corn. And then they can give them more, you get more fodder with your grain. Our deal is you're always trying to get more corn. So you're growing 150, 60, 70 bushel corn, and then you're trying to turn cows into it, and they're eating ears that look like baseball bats out there, and it's a little trickier, but
yeah,
I don't know. I think there's something there. I think a guy, if in a perfect world, you could grow a field with corn and really space it out, have multiple species of things, spread out through the whole field. But there again, it's a chemical nightmare to try to manage your crops and all the above.
Yeah, we get a lot of questions about, like the 60-inch row corn and interplantings with corn and trying to have something growing underneath the canopy to do just that, right? Offset some of that corn by having more forage or bumping your protein content of that whole grazing area.
Yeah.
And it's tricky. You said it, the chemical side is really hard. You got to pull your pre's out of your program. You got to be okay with some weeds coming in there because usually it's a pass a Roundup, hurry up and plant and try to get it to outcompete all the weeds.
Yeah. And then we were struggling with the planting, the corn. I always wanted to plant it with a no-till drill. I wanted to plant it with a drill. Well, up here in this country, there's been many years where it'll go from 30 degrees and snow, and the next week it's 90, and it's starting to dry out. And you got that 3-day window where you went out there and you scratched the field and you planted it. You planted your corn at 1.5 inches, and the soil turns to 80 degrees, and then you don't get no emergent because, your kernels are too shallow. But a week before it was too cold, and it's just so you really need a corn planter to get your corn to grow on general years. But I had a couple of home runs where I planted with a no-till drill and grew 170 bushel corn. And
how wide are rows?
7.5 inch.
Holy buckets.
Like 45,000. I was planting 45 to 50,000 on 7.5, and you had good summer and you got good stand when it took off. But like I said before, it's so tricky, that soil temp and depth and stuff for corn.
But yeah, theoretically, that should be the way to get more fodder and less corn yield
Right.
too. Tighten
Right.
up your plants and crowd
Yeah.
them a bit.
Yeah.
Was that a nightmare to chop for your chopper or not?
No,
Did it
not
wrap
with
at all, or
these new heads. They can go any which
those
way they
Kemper heads
want,
will
and
just
yeah, they can
mow it
go
down?
do whatever. No,
Yep. Yep.
no, they always thought it was kind of funny because I was sending those guys out there and they were cutting sideways and they were never following rows, and I had flags set up where I wanted my strips, and I think I probably overpaid maybe because they were sick of doing little things for me, but oh, it was all right.
Yep. Make a maze.
Yep,
So other than the corn, you're working
yep.
on. So you probably have some perennial hay ground that you're putting up feed with every year too, or what does that look
Yep,
like?
that's everywhere, kind of whatever we can get.
Yeah.
CRP is my favorite because, well, I like to bale graze. So when we do the bale grazing, CRP is the best feed for bale grazing because you get a lot of impact, a lot of residual from those bales, because the hay is so rough. Um, to me, if a guy could get rough hay and then supplement your protein, and you're doing so much good for your soil then, and then CRP really needs to be cut or managed because this dead, thatch that lays on top of these fields for years or decades even, and never gets touched, it needs to be removed, at least periodically, in my opinion. And then if the best thing I found for the bale grazing is to graze on alfalfa ground. If you got a stand of alfalfa that's 5 years old, well, for one example, I got a 20-acre field of alfalfa, and this year will be my last year bale grazing, and it'll be just over 1,700 round bales I've fed on 20 acres of alfalfa over the past 3 years, 4
Holy
years.
buckets.
And it's like every year I do it, I look at it and I'm like, oh boy, that's pretty thick. That's going to be too thick. And that alfalfa is so powerful, and the ground is so wanting that organic matter that it just eats the residue up.
See, I've had that conversation with other people that talk about or ask the question, where are my best acres to bale graze? And alfalfa always comes up because
Yeah.
alfalfa it grows back from the root. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't need a leaf on top of the crown to photosynthesize to gain energy to grow. It
No.
always grows back from below ground.
Yeah.
So
And like
having a
you
little
said,
extra litter doesn't matter.
yeah, that root, like an alfalfa plant, it could have a 20-foot root the size of your finger, and you put 6 inches of manure or hay over it, and you think that's going to stop an alfalfa plant? No way. I mean,
Yep.
it's going to power right through that thing, and away you go. And then if you got CRP, like I mentioned, you've got all that grass seed in there as well. So the first year you get a whole bunch of your intermediates and your bromes and all that stuff starts coming, and then it'll slowly choke itself back out. But I think bale grazing on alfalfa ground is the way to bale graze on crop ground. If
Right.
if you could bomb that field on year 5 or 6, and then hay it one more time, and then you could go right back in there and start farming that ground regularly or conventionally or however you want to farm. But you might have gained 2 or 3% organic matter on your soil, which is just
Yeah.
unheard of, to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Alfalfa is it's a low carbon plant too, being a legume. So higher percent nitrogen than legume, and so it's hard to build residue with alfalfa, even though it's a perennial.
Yeah.
You're taking all of your forage, all of your fodder off every year, so you're never really left with a lot. So what you're saying is completely true. Like that's an awesome way to actually build organic matter in alfalfa system.
The biggest problem, though, is we don't have enough cows and we don't have enough bales, because I've told many people if I could bale graze every acre of my ranch in 1 year, I would do it without even thinking. But it would take literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of bales and thousands of animals to do it, because I've done that 20 acres over the course of 4 years with 400 cows on there, and you don't have enough cows and enough bales is the biggest
Sure.
problem.
Hi, so we've had other people on here talk about bale grazing. We had Van Mansheim was on here probably about a year ago, and he talked about his system too and how he set up the bales and how he set up his fencing and how he did it. Can you give us that whole understanding of how you use your poly wire and how you set it up before you want to start grazing it?
Yep. And I started just like everybody tells you to do. I started at my very first one, maybe, 13 years ago, and I did just like that. I lined them up in a rows. I made it short so I could pull a poly wire across, and I gave them like 3 bales or 3 days worth of feed. And I didn't like it. I didn't want to go out there in the snow. I didn't want to put snowshoes on. I didn't want to drag a wire around. And every year, I slowly started not fencing as much. So now I'll turn cows into maybe 250 to 300 bales at a time. I'll open the thing and I'll go home. And that might take them 3 weeks or a month to eat it. But I don't care. I'm not going to monkey around with a fence because you got to look at it. You got to go back and think about why you put that bale out there. I put that bale out there for the nutrients. I moved it from somewhere where it didn't need to be, and I put it on my ground for the nutrients. Whether the cow eats 50%, 60%, 80%, I don't care. I got the bale where I wanted it, and they'll eat them. They'll eat them down to nothing if you wait long enough. So
What?
fencing is, I don't fence much anymore.
Yeah,
I don't like
yeah.
it.
Maybe you got burnt out from your fencing company, huh?
Well, I enjoy building fence. I don't like walking around out in the
Yeah.
snow.
Yeah, on a 75-degree sunny
Yeah,
day, then it's a lot
yeah,
different than in the winter.
yeah.
So do you set them upright and then take the net wrap off, or do you have what
We're
do you?
still sisal. I mean, I
Okay,
don't want to
sure.
go to net wrap because I don't want to spend the time
Yeah.
to take the net wrap off. And then one thing with net wrap, if you take that off, now that bale starts blowing apart. So let's say you got a really good winter and you never got to a couple of your pods of bales, and now you got a couple hundred puff balls out there that you're stuck with. I've had years where I've went back out there and loaded hay up and put it on the edge of the field, hayed that field, and then just set them back out the next year again because we never ate them. And
Yeah.
I just leave the sisal twine on. I set them just like you would normally because it sheds the water, and for that reason.
Okay, so if you got 200 bales, what do they touch every bale right away, or do they stay on a bale, eat it to the ground, or how does that look?
Well, look at humans. When we go to a buffet, when we go to a buffet, do we go to everything at a buffet and take a bite out of everything in the buffet, or do we go to what we like? I go to the prime rib and I'll eat four of those first, and then I'll go back and have a little bit of something. And there's many things I might not even eat. Well, it's the same with the cows. They'll walk around. First thing what they do is they'll start eating the grass on the ground,
Sure. Yeah.
because
Yep.
that's what they want to do. Then they'll
Yep.
sniff out the best smelling bales, and then they'll eat them. And the other thing is they're lazy. So if a bunch of cows goes over and opens a bale of hay, well, then the other ones come over and they just eat because they don't want to go eat through that crust and try to break open another bale. It's very interesting to watch. Very
Yeah.
interesting to watch.
Huh. And when you start that, do you have calves at side still, or are they weaned?
I've tried that, and if our weather was better, I'd run my calves on the cows all winter long and just creep feed them calves. But our winters, we got hurt really bad 2 years ago when we had 100 and some inches of snow, and it just turned terrible, and we lost animals, and it was just a wreck. So ever since then, I said no more. We're weaning calves. We're weaning now in December and January, and getting them off the cow. I don't want the cow to have that break. I really don't care about the cow's condition or the break because we're calving so late, into May. But it's like I don't want to lose calves or have a mess.
Right. Yeah. Jeopardize performance, get them going backwards, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
makes sense.
So we are weaning now, But I went probably maybe 5 years where I didn't wean until March. We were running those cows and calves on that standing corn and bale grazing side by side, cornfields and, bale grazing. And if the weather's, moderately okay, you can do that. And them cows
Yeah.
were fat coming off of there with a calf on them, but it only takes 1 year to really bite you, and then you start thinking a little different.
Yeah. Sometimes you go back to it too.
You might.
Short
You
memory,
might.
but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into the YouTube channel that you created and built and how you got into that and where it's at now and where you want it to go.
Yep. Well, to back you up there, I didn't build it. Dane, my middle son there, um,
Okay.
he had a hunting channel in high school, and he was big into the YouTube thing, and then he wanted to do a hunting channel, which he did. He built that up, but then the COVID year hit. He was a freshman in college and came home, and the hunting, of course, you're just trying to make content because hunting season only happens for a few months in the fall, and then you got the whole year to try to make content. Well, he was home helping that spring, and he started filming just us doing our thing, and he's like, "Well, we're getting more views on these videos than my hunting channel. And so he had the editing down, and he had the algorithm, the idea of how that works, and some of the logistics, the GoPro, the media software. He'd overcome those hurdles.
Sure.
And yeah, we got a $300 GoPro, and that's what we got. The nice thing is with the cloud, he's got his tire mat business. DF Cattle Mats is what our son Dane, he's the owner of that, makes those non-slip cattle mats out of recycled tires. He's moved out to Bowdle now and is set up out there. I can film with the GoPro here, and all I do is plug it into the charger, and it syncs to our Wi-Fi, sends all the footage up to the cloud, and then he pulls it down onto his computer. So we never see each other or hand a physical, microchip or whatever you want to call it back and forth. It just all goes up in the cloud, and he edits it, and it uploads to YouTube. So,
But he's been the editor the whole time then.
the whole time.
So you don't have to worry about that. Yeah,
No.
that's fantastic.
I mean, I give my input and,
Yeah.
kind of how I might think I want something to go, but
Sure.
98% of the stuff is all edited and his design on how it goes.
How many days a week are you recording something?
So we put 2 videos out a week. We put them out on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and I film some days or some weeks we might film a couple times, and a lot of times I'm hand to mouth. I'm filming Monday before the Tuesday one's coming out. So we're very current on our filming. I'll film that day. It doesn't need to be a specific day or project. I just grab the camera in the morning, take it with me all day, and that night I plug it in, and he edits for 2-3 hours that night, and the next day it's up on YouTube.
And you're getting, you get a lot of views. 20,000 views is
Yeah,
pretty
we're
common, it looks
getting,
like. And
Yeah, 20. I think we're at a little over 20,000 subscribers. Most of our videos are getting that 15 to 30,000 views, like you say. And of course, my idea was, well, I want this thing to blow up. I want it to blow up, and Dane's like, no, you don't want to have a million hit view video, and then you want to grow slow. And that's with
Okay.
everything, I think. You
Sure.
see that during COVID, when everybody was watching YouTube, a lot of these people were putting videos out and their subscribers went through the roof. Well, now they're struggling keeping content going because it wasn't organically built, or
Yeah.
it kind of was a flash in the pan type thing.
Right. Yeah, your subscribers, they know your schedule, they know what you're doing,
Yeah.
they come to expect it, and
Yeah.
you just consistently do it. So what are the things that you think have the most, whether it's views, clicks, relatability? Does it matter what content, or is it just pure content?
It's so crazy because you might think of something, it's like, oh, I really got to film today because we're going to be doing
Yeah.
this or that. It's going to be awesome. And that video will just get the same or less. And then one that you're like, I got to hurry up and scramble and make a video for tomorrow. I ain't really got nothing going on. And you go out, and you know how the farm is. You step outside and you're going left and you end up going right, and then you're going backwards, and then you're circling. You don't know what you're doing. And those are the videos that sometimes, really take off. So
Yeah.
you don't know. And if you start acting and try to guess, people can smell that a mile away, and
Yeah.
that's no good either.
Yep. Yeah, we mentioned that authenticity part of what you're doing, and it comes through. It's seen. It's awesome. So, what have there ever been moments where you're like, oh crap, I got to turn camera off now. I'm not showing that, or been some things that you got to pull out of?
Well, with the editing, there's always things that you're editing down, and if you watch our videos, they're very quick. The time in the frame is short. Our attention spans are so short nowadays that you've got to keep it interesting or engaging, otherwise people just click off. You know, so the editing we're really chopping it up. But yeah, you're not going to be out there beating on a cow, obviously,
Yeah.
with a paddle and then put it up there. Not that we do that. I mean, but
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
are
No,
things
there's.
that you're not putting on there.
Yep. Yep.
But we also do put quite a bit of, me and Sassy Pants are kind of bickering back and forth once in a while, and then we make up and whatever. And I mean, I think that
That's
people like
real
to see that, it is real, you know.
for sure. So you mentioned your son Dane and your wife. Do you have other family involved in the operation, or long-term goals with a multi-generation operation there?
Currently, no. Our oldest son, Cordell, he's an engineer. He lives in Sioux Falls. He's been a numbers guy since he's been little, and
Yeah.
spreadsheets and um, they've all done the actions and the ranch stuff when they're around. Every one of
Sure.
them will jump right in and do what they're wanting to do while they're here, but no, I think someday he could live on the outsides of a town maybe and have a smaller, I mean, maybe. Now,
Mm-hmm.
then Dane, our middle son, he's doing the cattle mat deal. He's involved in real estate and the hunting end of it. He likes the hunting. His girlfriend they have a pheasant hunting outfit out there, and
Okay.
then this cattle mat deal too is just really taken off. I mean, I can't imagine the amount of cattle mats he's sold, and then of course with the YouTube thing, it's really pushed it because we've exposed it all over.
Sure.
And
Are
then our
these those
daughter,
crossed rubber
yes,
cattle mats? Yep. Yep.
and then our daughter Ellie, our youngest, she's just finished VOTEC in Watertown for occupational therapy assistant. So she's going into the workforce, but she's looking for a farmer for a
There you
husband, I
go.
think. So we didn't scare her off of that,
Yep.
But currently, none of them are moving back here,
Yep.
and I don't think we want that. I mean, if it would happen, we would definitely try to work it in. But this was our thing, we grew
Sure.
up. This was what we wanted to do, and I hope my kids are finding what they want to do.
That's a very cool outlook. I think that's pretty powerful too. If just actually being okay with that. I often in our industry, in our world of egg and ranching, it's so emotionally driven with family, right? Where it is like I'm building this for you, and it does.
Yeah.
That's I don't think that's right at all, right? And what you do as far as expectations for the next generation and the pressure they might feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the trouble is, and I don't have anything against kids that stay home and take over, and but you're basically a glorified hired man for the most creative part of your life. Your younger years, you're kind of this hired man around there. A lot of outfits are that way. And then everything drops in your lap, and then you got to start trying to figure out how to pay for it or keep it going when you know, sometimes I feel I don't think it was the best thing at the time, but I don't know. Yeah, I think you just got to do what you want to do, and if the kids want to do something, let them do it. But
Yep. Yep. No, I
it's a
like that
tough
approach.
balance. It is. It can be a tough balance, but and we've set our operation up, with the calving a little later. We quit tagging calves about 7-8 years ago. I haven't tagged a calf for many years. Everything I do and everything we touch, I said, how could I do this if I was 70 years old and didn't want to jog around or just very slowly moving? Could I do this if I was 70 with some day help? So everything we look at, that's what we shoot for because we want to do this. Clear till we can't, basically.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
And that's one of the things I see in, especially cattle. It's the funniest deal to me is when a guy gets old enough where he's got his tractors paid for, his cows paid for, the first thing they do is they start selling cows because they don't want to work as much. And it's like, instead of changing a little bit, you've got everything going for you now, and it's like you start going the other way. But
Yeah, now's the time where it should be easier.
yes, very, very much so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good take. So we have to play one game. So we call it the graze it, harvest it, or rent it out game. So it's like would you rather. So I'm going to give you 3 scenarios, and I actually look back on 3 things that you've purchased here through Millborn Seeds, 3 products. And so I want you have to choose to either graze it, harvest it with hay it or chop it, or you can punt and just say, I'm going to rent it out. That one didn't work. Okay. That makes sense? So here are the 3 things. We're going to go back a little bit. 2020, you purchased some classic trio, so it was just radishes, turnips, rapeseed, one of our standard mixes still. 2022, you had a millet barley mix. It was Japanese and German millet, and then just robust green barley. And then in 2023, you had cow conditioner, which is Beemar sorghum sedan grass. So maybe you're going to say, oh, that one didn't work at all. I'm going to punt it. This one worked really good for hay, so I'm definitely haying this one. So we took a little bit of a twist to this graze it, harvest it, rent it out.
Yep. So the very first one, I think that was, we spread some over top of some standing corn. We're in the CSP program with our grazing management, and then doing some cover crop stuff, and that doesn't work. I mean, and they know it. The government knows it. I think maybe farther south or farther east you might get away with it, but up here, it's just so tough. 1 out of 10 or 15 years, you might get a little bit of action with that broadcast deal. The millet and that little mix we had, that was a whole bunch of PP ground we had west of us, and it was a little bit lower and more alkaline ground over there. And that actually turned out quite well. We got, I think, 1,200 bales that year of that millet blend, and that fed up nice. That was a good feed. In the BMR, I still have my bale wrapper. I do less of it now. I don't know why I don't do more of it, I guess, but I did that sorghum, and that makes pretty good feed. It really does. I wouldn't graze that sorghum necessarily because of the acid timing, and it just seems like when you really want to be grazing it, it's in that wrong time of the year, where you got to worry about that acid.
Prussic acid.
And then if you would wait until it's all said and done, now it's like, well, geez, I wish I would have had that in a bale, because now it looks like crap, and it doesn't look like they're going to eat much of it, So the interesting thing with that sorghum was, though, the one thing I really wanted it to work was I was trying to interseed that into oats. So what I did a couple years, I accidentally did it one year where I ran out of oats, and it was real spotty with the drill, like the last couple 5-6 passes. And I said, well, let's just go put some sorghum in right over top of that oats. Well, don't you suppose the oats grew? It's probably a half a bushel. Well, we ended up cutting the oats for hay, and then that sorghum just came right back, because we had cut it high enough.
Sure.
And it just come right back. And then it rained a bunch in July, and it got to be like 5 foot tall, and I didn't have to plant again. So then I was like trying to duplicate that, and of course you can never duplicate the accidents,
Yeah.
So I was letting the oats grow up about 4 inches, and then I'd go out there and I'd try to plant sorghum into this oats, it didn't work, but
sure. Yeah,
tried,
it gets crowded out, or
timing
is tricky with sorghum sedan grass and oats too. Just the heat and
and then also the pigeon grass. That's the next thing. If you take a small grain off, now you got a whole bunch of pigeon grass. True. And your sorghum will come, but you wish you would have killed all that pigeon grass somehow, which you can't.
No, yeah.
So there you're stuck again. But this year we did barley. I really like that. Barley stools, I think, a little more than oats and covers the ground quicker. So, and I just broadcasted that and then super coultered it in. So it went in pretty fast.
Yep.
And then we went right back in with the cover crop after that. Some rye and turnips and radish. And that worked. I think.
Dry hay from the barley then?
I
Forage
did.
barley? Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. And I like that. I mean, if you grind that or run it through a TMR, there's quite a bit of barley in those seed heads yet, even if they're flat and small, but there's still quite a bit of grain
Still
in there.
grain. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it tonned up pretty good. So, I don't know if I answered your questions for the three, but I guess I.
You described how they went well, and
Yeah.
that's real life.
Yeah.
That's good. So, any other piece of your whole operation that we missed, that we didn't cover, that you wanted to get to in the podcast, or you wanted to promote, or?
Well, I don't know what the vibe is out there with the Wagyu, but we've been breeding our whole herd to these Wagyu bulls for like 3 years now. So that's been an interesting journey to try to market off the farm these feeder cattle, and to try to get around this whole Wagyu thing, the look of the bulls and everything, the hurdles that way. But it's been kind of our goal to sell off the farm. We've got enough cattle now that the old days of beating everybody up to get all these animals to a sale barn in one day it just doesn't seem like it should be that way, and it just happens so fast when you're, many truckloads comes and everybody's panicking to get these things into town. This off the farm sale is the way to go if you can get a relationship built. So then we did that and the Wagyu at the same time. So you got to find a market, and then you got to find the buyer or whatever too. But we're getting it figured out, I think.
So you're using purebred Wagyu bulls
Yep.
on just commercial black cows or
Yep.
red cows?
Yeah,
Yep,
we didn't
okay.
change our cow herd at all.
Okay.
We didn't change our calving dates or nothing. We just and we were leasing bulls from that Jorgensen land. We were leasing those Angus before, and I really liked that. Where we could just bring a whole bunch of bulls in, lease them, and then get them out of here. So then we ended up partnering with a guy with the Wagyu. He's actually using them before us, so he uses them for 60 days. We give him about sometimes no break, and we take them off of his cows and put them right
Yep.
on our cows.
Yeah.
They're very fertile. Our breed up rates are good. Our calving time frame is good, and then we're sharing these bulls. These bulls are covering 50 to 70 cows a piece, each one of these
they're
bulls.
working.
So
Wow.
we're cheapening up our bull power that way. So that's been working out. And then, like I say, selling off the farm or moving these off the farm, it's so relaxing. You can sort a potload of calves and load them up, and it's really been slick.
So are you selling them back into a branded program, or is that what they're
We are
going back
now.
into that market, or what? Okay.
We are now. We've kind of tapped into a little bit of that. So we have some contracts with a branded deal, and the feedlot actually he's got multiple outlets as well. But
Sure.
we're kind of spread out a little bit right now. But yeah.
Have you noticed? Okay, so the bulls are a little bit uglier. What about your calf quality, temperament? Is that okay or okay to deal with, or?
If you watch some of our videos, you can see how we handle cattle. I did the Bud Williams school like 25 years ago. I met Bud Williams down in Texas, and that changed my life on how to handle cattle. So I can take what I think pretty wild cows or wild animals, and I think I can manipulate or work with them with their brain. But the Wagyu are kind of like sheep a little bit more. Once one goes, they all kind of want to go a little more than Angus. So it's a little bit different, but we're finding ways how to handle them, I think, to deal with that part of it.
Sure.
But they are ugly. They're very, if you're used to going out and looking at a soggy, big, fat, black steer, that's not these. They do not look like that.
A little more refined and slender,
Yep.
lanky.
And I think what's going to happen, just like human nature, we've all bred, you breed for the bigger stuff. That's just how we are. So I think what's going to happen with the Wagyu stuff is they'll start selecting for bigger muscled Wagyu bulls, and start to really try to grow that side of it.
Yeah.
That's my guess,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we hit on that. I didn't realize you were doing that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. No, it's been fun, and it's like, a lot of things we do, whether it's the planting of different, cover crops or different things each year, we're only here for so many seasons, When you start figuring your age and how many seasons you might have left, I surely don't want to use the same breed of bulls and the same cow and my whole entire life and sell to the same sale barn. I mean, you kind of want to live a little bit, I think.
Yeah, that's way cool.
Try to find some, because we've met a ton of people, through the YouTube thing, through the Wagyu thing, which you normally wouldn't do that. You load your calves up and go to town and you go out for a steak supper and you go home and you do it again next year. Well, we're not quite doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Finding the fun or opportunity that still makes sense. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I've certainly appreciated the time, Matt.
Yeah.
Appreciate you taking the time. For our listeners that haven't checked out the YouTube channel, it's at Ranching Sodak on YouTube. So go have a listen. Go have a watch. You'll be thoroughly entertained every week, twice a week.
Twice a week, yep. Yeah, it's educational, but it's also supposed to be a little comic relief, too.
There is.
So,
yep.
Yeah.
There's some good humor in there.
Yeah.
Yep. Certainly appreciate it. So, all righty, Matt. Well, thanks again. All right, we'll see you.
Well, we hope you enjoyed another episode of the Roots and Ruminants podcast. Let us know what you thought of it. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those social media things. And, if you ever have any questions, just give us a call. We've got a toll-free number here at 888-498-7333. Be glad to hear from you. Thank you.